Hello and welcome to Mile High Reefers. I'm Scott Anderson, and it's really humid down here in my sump room. Now, that's going to lead to problems in the long term. My furnace is down here, my water heater's down here, and in fact it kind of makes my basement more humid and more uncomfortable. So, I need to fix this. The other thing is, I'd like to be able to use my frag tanks. Last time I had both my tops off the frag tanks, the water was literally condensing on the water lines and raining off. So that's not going to work. So how am I going to get frag tanks? Well, I've got a couple ideas. The first one is, I can vent the room. The other idea is I can buy a dehumidifier. So I've looked into dehumidifiers. They're pretty expensive and they use a ton of energy. So I think I'm going to try to vent the room. So check out how I'm doing it. So what I'm modifying is the Utilitech Humidity Sensing Ventilation Fan. And I've already pulled it out of the box. But I think this is going to work great. So here's the Utilitech Humidity Sensing Fan. And I've mounted a couple 2x4s to the bottom of it. And that's because I don't have a great place to mount it in the ceiling. So I'm actually going to mount it on a shelf. So the idea being, it sucks air from the bottom, so by lifting it up on the 2x4s, there'll be plenty of room for airflow. And then the other thing I've done is I've put a cord on there so I can run power to it. So the plan is to tee off of the vent outlet for the dryer. And the current dryer setup is really freaking hokey. So here we go. All of the ducting is ran. So I've got a little elbow coming off, and I was able to reuse that from the old ducting that was there. Then I've got some flexible tubing, ran up to a Y, which then vents to the outside of the house. And then the other end of the Y is connected to the dryer setup, which I went ahead and reinforced. It's not perfect, but it's better. But this whole setup looks like it's working really well. I haven't ran it long enough to see if it's bringing the humidity down yet, but everything's working. I've ran the dryer. I'm not getting any blowback through into the room when I turn the dryer on, so the baffle inside of there is doing its job, and everything's working as intended. So part of how I'm making this work is I have a vent in the door. So fresh air is going to be able to come in through the door from the basement. And then I also have another vent at the top of the stairwell, so air can come from the upstairs as well. Now I got really lucky. I didn't have to install any of this. This stuff was already here. It's been about 3 days since I set this up, and it's made a huge difference in the humidity in here. The only thing that is slightly disappointing is this fan isn't really strong enough to bring the humidity down to a level that it shuts off, so it just runs all the time. So I've actually got it to where it just runs all the time now, and it's just easier that way. So I probably could have got by with a little less expensive unit, but so far it's working great. The humidity is much lower in here. Now, unfortunately, I don't actually have a gauge to measure the humidity, but just from the feel of this room, it is much less humid in here. And one thing that's going to allow me to do is to start setting my frag tanks up. Right now, I've just got them covered up to keep the humidity down, but now the humidity is less of an issue, so I can actually start thinking about setting those up. So that's another cool project to look forward to in the future. So thanks for watching this episode of Mile High Reefers. Please like and subscribe if you like what I do, and I'll see you on the next one.